How you doing, Coach?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Coach Franklin just talked about your backup quarterback battle and how that could play out for quite some time. Just from your perspective, coming out of the spring, how impressed were you with where Smolik was coming off his injury and Grunkemeyer, obviously, with the experience he got in the postseason, and where those guys improved since then?
Well, impressed with both of them, where they were, how they left spring, and then going into, through the summer, because, there's a lot of development that does occur in the summer. And so those guys did it, and what you look for. And I talked to the offense about this, and this really applies to everybody, but not just those two positions. But, nowadays, fall camp is a continuation of everything that we did in spring through summer and into fall camp. But, before, when there was no ball that you could use in the summer, there was very limited time with the players. There's still limited time, but it was like you had to start over. You had to really, really evaluate where everyone's at. Now we haven't had that, so I've been able to see those guys make incremental strides throughout spring and summer. And sometimes when you are in it all the time, those incremental strides and improvements, they're not as noticeable until you start going against the defense. I think both those guys have done a great job. Their grasp and understanding what we're doing offensively specifically is higher for sure than when the year 2025 started. And it's very evident with their approach to, preparation, meetings, how they handle the huddle, all those things. It's very, very evident. So looking forward to that battle continuing. I think, this program is all about competition. And, when you have competition at the quarterback room, I think that's awesome for the whole organization.
In the middle here, Max.
Andy, how's it going?
Great.
James just talked a little bit about the offensive line, a couple of position battles there. Does the anticipated depth at that spot, whether it's 8 or 9 guys, does that change at all what you can do schematically, whether it's 6-man sets, whether it's moving Vang out like you did last year, or more of that kind of stuff?
Well, it probably gives you more comfort to do some of those things and add them when you have the depth. I think really it's just maybe more about comfort, right? In the sense that you feel good about it. And then, so honestly, the challenge, and it's a great challenge to have, is to make sure that you're evaluating all those guys. And, it's not too much musical chairs. And there's, that's the most important group in the football team, in that those guys have to play together. And if you're trying all these different algorithms to figure out who's going to play, all of a sudden you find out that you haven't worked any. But the fact that we have maturity in that group, right? And you have some guys who are younger that we're excited about, or newer to the team, getting reps, the way that they've showed and demonstrated already what they could do throughout spring, summer, and fall camp. It just gives you a ton of comfort. Coach Troutwine, Coach Quisert have done a great job with those guys in developing them, and they get what we want to do. But yes, when you feel like you have 8, 9 guys that can play, you've heard me say it before. I don't we'll do whatever it takes to move the football and score. If it's 10 linemen on the field, we'll do it. You know what I mean? And so when you have depth at that position, you have your depth at the skill positions, really your imagination becomes the limitation that you have, as long as you're not overextending individuals and asking them to do things that they're not trained to do.
Rich?
Andy, how different is the dynamic, or are the dynamics on offense with Pena, Ross, and Hudson compared to last year?
I don't know if there's, to speak to the difference of a dynamic. I think what I would talk about is that those individuals specifically have been fantastic teammates. And you have dynamic issues, as you're referencing, as a team, when you have guys who immediately start acting selfish, and they start to do selfish things. And those guys haven't at all. And they've been nothing but a great part of our program. And so the dynamics have been awesome because they're awesome, right, as people. And they work hard, they grind, they have been leaders in their own right. And as you know and can imagine, when you're newer, it's harder, to be a leader. Someone who's been in our program for a long time, like Nick Dawkins and Drew Aller, but those two, all those guys were leaders on their team before they left there, right? And now they're here in our program. So it's been awesome, and because they're awesome people, but it's also been great because they've added competition to the room, and they've added competition amongst each other. They've added competition to the other receivers who they might be younger, and they see it, and those guys have done a really good job of demonstrating things by example.
Over here on the right, Tyler.
Hey, Andy, how are you?
Great.
I want to ask about the tight end room. I know James said people aren't talking enough about Khalil Dinkins, but I wanted to go to Andrew Rapplier because we just really haven't had a chance to talk about him, period, because of his absence. What does it look like with him getting back onto the field this camp and thus far? And what have you seen over the past 7-8 months that we haven't that give you confidence he's going to be able to contribute this year?
Well, I would tell you the first thing you can see with him is that just a willingness to want to inject himself to get better. Sometimes when people come back from injuries, and there's no right or wrong way, as long as everyone's attacking it, to do everything they can to better themselves. And so I don't mean this in a negative in the sense of other people and how they've approached it, but more like we have to pull Rap back. Like we have to kind of grab him and say, okay, you don't need to take this rep. You know what I mean? Like he wants to just keep jumping in front of the line and getting more reps, which I appreciate, the motivation to want to do that and get better. So that's like, I've noticed that from, like in the whole year of 2025. Right. And so, I don't know what the timeline is when they come back and when they can, but as soon as he was able to walk and move, he literally wanted to jump in to drills. You know what I mean? And so you see the motivation from him to want to come back, which gives me a ton of promise that he will come back. Right.
Back left, Allie.
Hey, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. We think about college sports in general. Usually these veteran teams, that poise that they can have late in the season is what shines through. And when you watch a college basketball team make a run, a bunch of fourth-year guys might make the difference. When you look at your offense, how much of this core is coming back, particularly quarterback, running back, offensive line? Does that give you confidence that they've seen a ton of football, they've played a ton of football, and maybe you can be a little bit more creative and lean on them in this fourth year for them?
Yeah, when you have maturity coming back, and I'll use that word because experience and maturity are really the two different things. A lot of times they go hand in hand, but they are different. So we have experience and maturity, which is really, really healthy. What you worry about as a coach, because football at this level in the competitive environment, there is going to be adversity. We're going to face adversity. How much, what it looks like, nobody really knows. But the fact that we have been able to observe our guys and they've responded the right way to adversity, there's no surprises, right? And then they can show by example what responding to some sort of challenge looks like, okay? So the fact that we have that, and then you build that into the younger guys, the newer guys that we need to develop and grow. And then you build into I'm going to use the word comfortable, even though this program really is all about making people uncomfortable. They're very comfortable with what we're doing. They know what practices are going to be like. They know what the install is now. You know what I mean? They're not surprised. And so really, and we just talked about this as a staff the other day, we got to make sure we do enough to keep those guys mentally stimulated, right? Maybe it's more situational work. Maybe it's curveballs into practice or whatever it is, to make sure that those guys are feeling adversity. They're feeling, new stimulus that they have to respond and react to, and allowing them to get better. And coach, I'll say this because it matters. As a coach and a teacher, one of the easy things to do is want to always coach your young guys first, because typically that's kind of the low hanging fruit because the things that you teach them are so superficial. But to coach a guy like Drew Aller and Nick Dawkins and the receivers that are seniors and Dink, who was brought up earlier, like those guys have played a lot of football. Like for us as coaches and teachers to develop them, we got to find other ways to challenge them and grow. And it's actually been really fun and rewarding as coaches to be able to do that, the things that we can do with them.
We got time for one more. Audrey.
Hey, Andy, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Wanted to ask about Drew Aller and what do you think are maybe some of the next steps you want to see him take this year, and where maybe those areas for biggest growth?
Well, it's just we're in it now, so it's kind of hard to sit there and say, well, this is what you have to do from last year because that's over now. But we've challenged really since the moment I've got here about the ability to move and extend plays with your legs and the mobility. And I think I said this in the spring. I'll say it now. I mean, he's moving awesome. You know what I mean? He's really. I was teasing the other day. He was wearing sweatpants at practice. I told him, I said, dude, you got to put your wear shorts, man. You got great hamstrings now. You know what I mean? Like show those things off. And he laughs, of course, but I was being serious. But like so that the way he can move and handle that, like he's so comfortable with all the things that we're doing, and it's more about like communicating with him and collaborating with him than it is necessarily just coaching him. Like when I was referencing before about what do you got to do to get their best guys better, and a player like him who's so smart, who's cerebral, and he's going to work so hard and prepare so hard. Like, how do you collaborate with him and challenge and get him to maybe critically reflect on, certain things? Like for example, this summer, we were talking, he's like, we ever thought about this kind of route or do you think? And I've thought about, yeah, I've coached that before, and here's why we really don't do that. You know what I mean? For him to see and understand and kind of grasp where, especially as an offense, it's really easy to just grab a bunch of plays and do them, but you can't do that because you can't train yourself and all those things, right? So to have those mature conversations about what we do, why we do it, what you saw, why he made the decision he did, is really what's going to help elevate him. You know what I mean? Like he's at the point now in his career here with Coach Franklin and being at Penn State, and like he has some autonomy, meaning like he doesn't need to be told what to do and think it, right? Like he needs to be involved in the thinking process, and it has very, very much been that.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, everyone, thank you. I appreciate the clap.
Mike, to you. We'll start right here with Mike Gross in the middle right there. Yep.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Oh, hey, Mike.
Your people say your defense is relatively complicated and takes time to learn. Is that an accurate charge in your mind? And also, have you gotten better installing it multiple times over the years at teaching it and simplifying it?
Yeah, both. I think it's a great question. I think in today's game of football, it needs to be somewhat complicated because you need to have answers for everything, particularly at this level. Offenses don't run the same things in college, which is more in the NFL they do. So you better have all different kinds of answers. But the key point you made is in the teaching and installing, of it. And I've gotten better at that. And I have to, particularly coming into a situation like this. Our charge is to be great now. So if it's too complicated or I can't get it installed in a way that the players pick it up quickly, then that's my fault. So I think I've developed a process that helps move it along at a more rapid pace.
Over here on the right, Tyler.
How are you today?
Hey, Tyler.
I wanted to ask about two linebackers that you've gotten a chance to see for a few practices now. Tony, who wasn't obviously available in the spring, and then Amari, who we saw you put out was your defender of the day for practice one. What did he do to kind of earn that in your mind, and how would you evaluate what you've seen from Tony this year?
Yeah, I didn't get to see Tony in the spring, right, because he was out. Certainly got to watch a lot of film on him and saw his talent. But just in a couple days, very impressed. He seems to have developed physically in the off season, and not only that, but he's picked things up quickly, which is tough to do when you don't get the reps on the field. So in the first 2 days, I've seen his knowledge of the defense has been impressive. And he's able to perform, within the scheme and utilize his talents, in a way that he kind of jumped out in the first 2 days. Amari, again, same thing. Just really watching film on him because he transferred here. But in 2 days, I see a lot of natural linebacker skills, and you don't see that as much in this day and age of college football because a lot of linebackers are converted from other positions, and there's a skill to playing linebacker that a lot of it is innate and instinctual. And, you know, we're at LBU. So, I mean, had a lot of great ones here. And you can just see those guys, and, you know, when you look at the past and how they made plays, you know, was a lot of it's through natural instinct, you know, through things that you can't teach. So with Amari in the first 2 days, I see a lot of that natural instinct.
In the front right here, Greg.
Coach, you mentioned Tony not being a guy you got to see this spring, but he wasn't the only one that's seen as a potential starter or contributor who wasn't available. So do you feel like you're where you want to be in terms of your install with your best guys, top too deep, so to speak? Do you feel like you're a little bit behind, or do you feel like you're in a spot where you're okay with everything?
I think we're in a good spot. And the first 2 days, you know, have shown that they responded to the installation without getting the reps. Tony's an example. Nittany, Zane, you know. AJ wasn't out there all the time. So it was definitely a concern, because not having them seen them do it on the field, it was a concern. So far so good, you know. So the pace of the installation will really depend on how well those guys perform it on the field. So as long as they keep doing well, and it's just an early sample size, but, you know, we get to press forward at a rapid pace.
On the right, Johnny.
Good afternoon, Jim. As you guys sift through the 2 deep and even 3 deep at defensive tackle, how much of a help and how much of a benefit is it to have someone like Zane, you know, already well established?
It's huge. You know, when you can have your defensive tackles, I always say, when your defensive tackles make tackles, right, instead of using up blocks, but when they're actually productive, it changes the whole way that you plan defense. You know, and Zane's that guy. I mean, he's that guy who can do that immediately, who has done it. And now we, like you said, we have to build the depth around, and there are a lot of candidates. You know, the other guy I didn't get to see in the spring was Ford. Really impressed with him in the first 2 days. Really impressed. And, you know, the coaches said good things about him, but it's the same deal. I did not get to see him actually do it. And he's really jumped out at me the first couple of days.
We got time for one more. Rich in the front.
Hi, Jim. You have coached some very, very good defensive backs, and I was just wondering, what have you seen from AJ and Elliott just in these 2 practices, and what do you expect from them during the season?
Yeah, don't forget about AC too. Yeah. And the new guy who should have been a senior in high school, Darius, impressive. If I had to use one word, it would be impressive. Terry Smith has built an awesome culture in that room. You know, those guys are playmakers. So I'm going to set things up for them to make plays. I saw it in the spring. I'm seeing it already in 2 days. They are a real strength of our defense.
Thanks, Coach.
That was easy. That was quick, man.
The hard part's
All right, we have special teams coordinator Justin Lustig. Please raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. We'll start with Greg Pickle and then Daniel.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
I'm doing great.
You have Zion Tracy, obviously back, a guy that finished the year's punt returner for you, but I imagine there's competition there. So how do you see that playing out, and who are some of the guys you are looking at there at this point of camp?
Well, the first thing I would say is, like, I remember sitting up here last summer and you know, it not having a ton of answers for you. We've got a lot of answers right now, and it's a really good problem to have. We've got a deep room there. Obviously, Zion, really first time doing it. I thought he progressed really well, and still expect big things from him. But you got Trevor Pena, who's a senior, a seasoned veteran doing it. Devontae Ross, a veteran who's done it, who's had a touchdown against Iowa when he was at Troy. And then you've got a good crop of young guys. We've got Tyseer Denmark, who's shown a lot of capability back there. Josiah Brown, the Kobe Howard's another guy that I'm really excited about. So like a really deep position that is going to show a lot of improvement this year.
We'll go Daniel and then Max.
Justin, on your right.
Yep.
Out at Big Ten Media Days, James talked about, in year one, not losing games because of special teams, and now in year two, being able to win games by larger margins because of special teams. What does that look like to you? What does that in practice look like?
Yeah. So, I think the first thing I think about is like, we have the potential right now for major improvement on special teams. We've got to execute it in the fall camp and get better. But there's a number of reasons why I say that. Number one, it's year two for me in the system. It's year two for the players in the system. Just that experience. We've got experienced guys. Really, our personnel is set up in a really good position right now. We really have returning starters at every position. There's no big question marks on special teams, whether it's place kicker, kickoff, punt. And then we've got depth at all those positions as well. So, those two things, year two in the system, they know exactly what they're doing. It's their second time doing all the techniques and all the schemes. Just sets us up for potentially making major improvements.
Max.
Listen, with Gabe, Riley, Ryan, all three of them back this year, and most of them veterans at that. How do you push them? Where can they still improve in their roles this year?
Yeah, I think, I'll give you a punting, for example. One guy that's really stood out early on so far is Gabe Nwosu. So he's challenging Riley right now, and they're pushing each other. Matthew Parker's having a good camp, and he's pushing Barker. So we've got good depth. And those guys have still got to earn their positions, and I'm excited about them, and they have bright futures, the returners, but there's good depth at all the positions.
Tyler.
Thank you. So freshmen, so much time that the path toward playing time runs through your unit and then maybe ends up in defense or offense. Anyone you're willing to kind of publicly discuss based on your observations from spring and into fall camp, freshmen who have made a strong impression on you, and that's an area of like their arsenal this year?
Yeah, I think I'm still kind of figuring that out right now. The one name that stands out right now is Darius Dixon. He's a guy that's just showing up. Now we're really deep at corner, so there's a lot of decisions to make down the road in terms of red shirts and how much he's going to play. But he's a guy that's going to potentially have a chance to get on the field early on special teams.
Any other questions for Coach? Craig?
Coach, you also hold the Nichols coach position as a part of your title. Obviously, that seems to be a pretty big position in Coach Nolles' defense, and one where you would presume there's a lot of candidates. So how do you see that position group shaking out so far through the first 2 days of camp?
Yeah, there's some similarities in terms of what we did last year. And Zion kind of held that spot last year, and he's been running with the ones right now. But again, another spot where there's some guys that have stepped up, Dinkins, Colin Dinkins, and Kenny Woosley have had good days so far. So just good depth at that position, and excited about those guys. And they're guys that can do everything, right? Like that's what that position is. You got to be able, physical, be able to tackle in the box, but you also be able to cover one-on-one.
Tyler.
Going to go the same route as Greg and your other occupation, obviously outside linebackers, you do the work there. What does Tony Rojas look like comparatively to maybe what he was dealing with some issues last year, and any early feedback on what Kari Jackson has been able to accomplish, since he's a guy who was kind of out of sight, out of mind for us as well?
Yeah, I think, well, first off with Tony's in A form right now. And he's in great shape. He's looked great through the first two practices. So we're excited about him. And he's he's just gotten better, and hasn't taken a step back at all. Kari's still working hard and learning the system, and there's some growth there still, but potentially a guy that could help us on special teams too, for sure.
Time for two more, Zach and then Allie.
Hey, Coach. Thanks for the time. Kick returner. Do you still plan on, because Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen are so heavily involved in the offense, do you kind of roll the risk that, hey, they're so valuable in special teams that, we're still going to utilize them there? Or do you have confidence now in Quentin Martin, Corey Smith, Cam Wallace, anybody else?
Yeah, I think it's those are game time or game week decisions and game planning decisions. You feel like there's a weakness potentially in the opponent's kickoff coverage, or more probably importantly, the kickoff guy's not putting it through the back of the end zone every single time. If we feel like we can really take advantage of a weakness, you're going to see Nick still back there. But certainly I'm confident in Quentin Martin, Corey Smith are two guys that we're expecting to be back there as well.
Allie.
Hey, Coach, over here on the left.
Yep.
Can you help us peel back the curtain on Jim Nolles, what it's been like since he's been here in the spring, learning to install this defense, and really what he's like in these meetings?
Yeah. In my career, so when I got here, I had been coaching on offense for almost 15 years, and I hadn't been on defense. So I'd coached the receivers and the tight ends and the running backs. So getting on defense was a little bit new again for me last year. And, the difference between last year and this year has been dramatic in terms of just different. And but Coach Nolles is detailed. He's so detailed. He's smart. He's intelligent. He's a great teacher. I've learned a lot working with him, and excited about being a part of his system.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Yep. Thanks, guys.